Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's event, Startup Financing Forum, our angel financing panel. We put together a great panel for you today. My name is Andy Salvania. I'm the Executive Director of New York Tech Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization that focuses on connecting and creating an accessible tech ecosystem here in New York City. Before we begin today's panel, just want to give a quick shout out to all of our annual sponsors that make this programming possible. Sponsors like Xander, Work Better, Google, Propeller, Grasshopper Bank, the CEO's Right Hand, and many more. They all support us to do our work in the community. If you'd like to be a sponsor for this event or any events in the future, please reach out to me after. There's three ways that you can help support New York Tech Alliance. One is making a donation when you RSVP for one of our virtual events. The second is by becoming a individual or corporate member of New York Tech Alliance. And the third is by simply making a donation to support the organization. You can do so at nytech.org/support_NYTA. We have a number of virtual events upcoming. The first one is Tuesday, May 5th, the virtual New York Tech Meetup. The next is Thursday, May 7th, a series for CEOs and founders to talk about the issues that they're encountering during this time. And then additional events coming up through June. To check out all of our events, check us out at nytech.org/our-events. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Paul. Paul, take it away.
All right, Andy, thanks very much. Again, my name is Paul Ellis. I'm a board member with Tech Alliance. I run the legal events. I'm also the managing partner of the Paul Ellis Law Group. So I think given the current situation, we should certainly start by sending out our thoughts and prayers to those who have been impacted, whether they're ill or they have friends or family members who have passed away. Also, we should certainly send out expression of support to our healthcare workers, our other essential frontline workers who are doing so much to keep us healthy and safe during this time. So today we're here to talk about the economic crisis coming out of the health crisis. As we know, there is a world of economic pain out there that companies of all sizes are going through. Startups are perhaps especially impacted given their often very tight cash situations, which is why events like this, I think, are really important. Some of you may have attended our event last month on VC financing and how that's being impacted by COVID-19. This was our chance to turn the same sort of attention to the world of angel financing. So we're really pleased to have an outstanding panel with us today. We have Larry Rickenstein, board member of New York Angels, Brad Schrader, president of Harvard Business School Alumni Angels of New York, and Sapna Shah, a principal with Red Giraffe Advisors. In order to get started, we are just going to go around quickly with introductions, and then we will jump into substance. So again, my name is Paul Ellis, managing partner of the Paul Ellis Law Group. We are an 8-lawyer boutique firm in Midtown Manhattan. We do a lot of work with startup companies in financing, both angel, venture capital, and friends and family, as well as mergers and acquisitions, general operational matters, formation, and all the various legal issues that startup companies face. Larry?
Hi, Larry Rickenstein. I have been an angel investor for about the last 15 years. I've got a portfolio of close to 70 companies. I'm on the board of New York Angels, and I actually just started my own startup in energy harvesting generating technology called We Power. But I appreciate being here, and I thank you, Andy and Paul, for putting this together.
Brad?
Brad Schrader. I'm currently president of the HBS Alumni Angels. I spent my career in manufacturing and industrial services world, making, shipping stuff, fixing and growing businesses, and So my focus now is mainly on B2B enterprise businesses, and with a special focus on that rare world of manufacturing startups.
Very good. Sapna?
Thanks, Paul, and thanks to both of you, Paul for hosting and Andy for organizing. Looking forward to being part of this panel. I have been an angel for about 6.5 years after a career in retail at big companies and as an entrepreneur. I invest in the future of retail at the pre-seed stage, and I also run a program called Retail X Series, which is a kind of event series and ecosystem for early stage founders that are revolutionizing the future of retail.
Very good. Thank you. I should say one of the reasons I'm so pleased about this panel is that each of you, you're angel investors, but you've also you've run companies, small companies, large companies. So one of the things we're really looking forward to hearing from the panel today is not only what's happening in the angel world, but advice that you may have for the founders in terms of how to survive these challenging times. So to get into substance, this is how we're going to organize this. For those of you who have attended the panels that I've run before, you know that I like to pack them full of content so you get the most out of your time. And today will be no exception. What we've done this morning, I went through all of the questions and answers or questions that you all put in the registration process. Thank you for that. It was really helpful in terms of coming up with the format and the outline for today. I basically divided things up into 4 topic areas. You can see them on your screen now. And so what we're going to do is to go through each of these areas, spend about 10, 12 minutes on each area, have each of the panelists make some initial comments and observations about those areas. And then we will go to some questions from the participants, both the ones that you have put in the registration process, as well as ones you, I guess, through the chat window. We'll take questions during the panel as well. I will tell you now, we have over 100 registrants and lots of questions. I know we probably won't be able to get to all of them, but we will certainly do the best we can. So with that, let's jump into the first issue, which is really that sets the stage for everything we're going to talk about. Current state of the angel investment marketplace. What's happening today and what's expected over the coming months, including with respect to deal terms like valuation and other principal terms, timing of deals, types of businesses that are getting funded. And an important question, is angel investment being impacted in the same way as venture capital or differently? Because we recognize that many of you that are doing an early a seed raise, you might be able to raise from angels, you might be able to raise from early stage VCs if the amount is appropriate. And so that's a decision that a lot of you are facing right now. On that first question, Larry, you want to kick it off?
Sure. I guess 2 words come to mind: different and difficult. Normally when we have a drop in the stock market at any time, you see a pullback in angel investing. Angels are using angel investment funds to get better returns than they get from the stock market. And, in today's market, everything is so bad and they're losing money. And that's really pulling back some of the available funds that are normally available from these angel investors. I've talked to a number of angels, I've seen some surveys, and especially in a time now where it's not only a stock market issue, but you've got the pandemic, angels are pulling back a bit for sure. And I think that the pandemic, because there is so much uncertainty, is making this a very difficult environment. Not an impossible environment. I want to say I do believe there'll be plenty of companies financed by angel investors, but it's going to be more challenging. As far as the VCs are concerned versus the angels, I think VCs have been less subject to the stock market swings. But certainly, talking to some people today, they also are taking a more measured approach, although there are some out there that are really looking for opportunities and have money available.
Thank you for that. Sapna, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Larry. You know, this kind of uncertainty, particularly because we don't know when the pandemic will end, I think it makes people more cautious on many things, including angel investments. But I do also think there are maybe two kinds of angels that you should think about as you're raising money. One is sort of more the high net worth individual who might be really more of like what we call a tourist investor, who might invest more in good times or sporadically when a friend shows them a deal, and they might throw in some money, but they're not out there actively seeking. They're really focused on their day job. And then you've got probably angels like more that like us who are on the panel who really spend a lot of time and effort seeking out great companies, whether it's through an angel group or individually, and we're more in it for more regularly. And I think you might see different outcomes there where some of those high net worth individuals might fall out, but certainly like, you know, angel groups aren't going away. Many angels will continue to invest. And so I think there's you need to have a real understanding of you know, who you're particularly talking to. But I do think that with angel and VCs both, Paul, you added a question about valuations. I think we're all expecting valuations to come down, you know, throughout the year, depending on how long this lasts. How much? You know, I've seen a lot of surveys and information that says kind of people are guessing around 30% from pre-COVID, but we'll see kind of where that lands.
Thank you. Brad?
Yeah, I'm just building on Larry and Sapna. Before we get to the whole topic of valuations and terms, which I know is on everyone's mind, I just wanted to reinforce angels are still here. Yes, there's definitely been some impact from recent events, and yes, there are observers and there are active investors right now. But I've been impressed by the way at least the largest and most established angel groups have leaned into this crisis with virtual pitch nights that have continued apace, doing other activities online. I know in the case of the HBS Angels, and I think Larry and Sapna, you've seen this too, by going online, we've seen actually an increase in the attendance in our pitch events. Now, to steal Sapna's term, I think some of those are tourists and aren't necessarily an indicator of increase in investing activity. But if you are able to get into a virtual pitch event, you're going to be seen by a lot of folks. And we are investing, just like Larry's group and others, apace right now. An interesting point about venture capitalists versus angels. Angels are one-person investors, and each one makes his or her decision as it goes. Venture capitalists, while they have deeper pockets and bigger pools, also rely on commitments, for cash commitments, capital commitments from limited partners who, in the current environment, are having trouble stepping in. And so there's not necessarily the case that there's more money at all the venture capital firms. And where they do have funds, they're, I think, engaged in a bit of triage right now as they decide where to focus their war chest to support their portfolio. Whereas angels, I think, tend generally to be more supportive of the groups that they're in. Nobody has infinite cash, but it's been encouraging to me to hear the comments from the angels I speak with about their concern to focus on helping companies rather than the alternative.
Brad, this is a really important point, and it's something I wanted to touch on, because we've heard this a lot, that VCs, while they may still be committed to investing, their first attention right now is perhaps understandably on helping out their existing portfolio companies. And I know Andy and I were chatting a week or two ago, and he and I have both recognized, me with my clients and his with talking with people at Tech Alliance, that a lot of founders seem to be seeing more traction right now with angels than with VCs. And perhaps that may be part of the reason that angels may be less, they have less concern on their portfolios right now. Or, I mean, what's your assessment of that?
Well, I'll answer, and then I'm sure Larry and Sapna have a view too. I don't want to sound opportunistic here. I don't think that's the point. In fact, there's a real thrust among many of the angels I know to lean into helping the pandemic with healthcare focused investments, and I know we'll come to sector developments in a moment. So there's that interest, a civic interest, and then there's, as Sapna pointed out, there are those who have a steady and disciplined approach to this, and there's a steady flow of founders who are looking for funds even in the current environment. And so we're open for business and want to do what we can right now.
Sapna or Larry, any you want to jump in on any of that?
I'll jump in. I think, I've been talking to angels and VCs, and I think one of the interesting things is that I think at the earliest stages, pre-seed and seed, there are a lot of seed funds on the VC side who have raised money recently. So they do have a lot of dry powder, and they will have to deploy that. So it might not be right this minute, but it will certainly happen. So I think it really depends on the firm. From a VC perspective, I've talked to firms who are kind of pulling back. I've talked to firms who are out there actively seeking out new deals. I think from an angel perspective, completely agree with Brad. Like, certainly, and we're going to talk about sectors, but there are certainly places for great investments to be made right now. And I think both angels and VCs are still looking at kind of those opportunities really actively if they've got the capital to do it.
What about deal terms? Sapna, you mentioned, I think it's clear that valuation is dropping somewhat. Would any of you like to speak to the issue of deal terms generally? How you see they're being impacted currently?
I know from our own experience at New York Angels, we've never been big on safe notes or KISS deals, and we still don't like them. But I think in today's environment, there's certain protections, and it depends on the deal, that angels are going to be more firm on than perhaps they had been in a frothy environment.
Yeah, if I could jump in, all that's true. I try to caution all the firms who approach us to be realistic and conscious of the current environment. We're not trying to, we're interested in crushing founders with devastating terms, but remember, angel investing is an individual sport. So if you're pitching to a room of 60, you're trying to convince 60 or 80 individuals that your investment is a good one. And they're all coming from the current environment, which is a much more cautious one, as Larry and Sapna mentioned. So be willing and conscious of your evaluation going in, because that's part of your sales pitch, and it helps no one to continue to swing for the fences in the current environment. I would also add, though, that down rounds and tougher terms aren't universal. We're going to come to sectors, and as Sapna mentioned, some business areas are up, and businesses that have a good near-term outlook or a good outlook at the end of this when the new normal, whatever it is, returns, are going to be looked on much more favorably. So focusing on those aspects in conjunction with evaluation and other related terms will make the deal happen.
All right. So I think we're going to move on to the next area, which is process and strategy. So generally speaking, and again, this is something that came up a lot in talking to the VCs last month. Perhaps one of the biggest points was how much process has changed as a result of the current situation. How you connect with people, how you relate to people, how you build the relationship. One of the VCs said, I have to think harder about joining a board when I haven't been able to sit down with the founders or the other board members and know what I'm getting myself into. It's sort of interesting ways in which this is all being impacted that perhaps one might not have put so much attention or focus on. So I guess, generally speaking, if you can each talk about process a little bit, how does it change the way you connect with people, the way you build the relationship, or assess the company, and get to the closing? Maybe Brad, if you'd like to lead this off.
Sure. Well, online, that's the key right now. Yes, the pitch events are online, but this is a time when your online networking activities are critical. Being able to make a virtual connection with someone in an angel group who can add a favorable opinion of your deal will make a big difference in the funnel process. Just lobbing in your application, which might have worked in the past, isn't enough. So leverage your LinkedIn channel to find someone who might be involved with that angel group to help bring some color to your application. Second, I just want to emphasize, be sensitive to the environment we're in. It's a risk, but also an opportunity. The founders who speak clearly and realistically to what the current environment is doing to their business and what they're doing about it will have a much better chance of getting funded. And it doesn't all have to be negative, as I pointed out, and Sapna pointed out. There are opportunities in this now and in the future. So speak to those.
Sapna?
Yeah, I think I might come at it from a little bit of a different perspective since I'm kind of a, one person and not part of a group. I think when you're pitching to having meetings with an individual angel, it might take a little bit longer now to do it over Zoom, and it might take a few more meetings. So I think it's a little harder to get to know people for the first time virtually. I know I'm in the middle of diligencing a company right now, and we're probably at our third meeting, and I'm not sure we would have had to kind of keep, I don't know how many we'll have, but certainly it's taking a little bit longer to make a decision. I don't know the founders as well. So I would say be a little more patient and expect the process with individuals to take longer. I think you used to hear a lot of stories about, meeting an angel and they wrote the check in the first meeting. And certainly I was never like that, but maybe you won't get so many first checks, checks in the first meeting, and you might need to get a little bit deeper. I think it's also really harder to convey your passion and excitement for your business over Zoom or WebEx or FaceTime. And you might just want to practice a little bit more of how do you bring that excitement that you feel about the business to sort of this very 2D flat interface. And you might want to practice in front, and videotape yourself and kind of, get feedback from others as well. Because I think some of that gets a little lost. It gets hard to see the excitement and passion you get. You start just answering questions, and it becomes very kind of monotone. So I think those are some tips for kind of if you're talking to one person as opposed to pitching to a room of people virtually.
Thank you, Larry.
I think Sapna's point was a very good one. It is definitely hard to show the passion and excitement in what you're doing in this environment. So the practice and making sure that people understand it is very important. You know, when you look at the process from, like, for example, at New York Angels, we typically once a month had our screening meetings where we would see 14 companies, usually 7 in a room, split it up, and we could go back and forth to the different rooms. We've now gone to a process where we're looking at 10 presentations in basically one Zoom room at a time. So, you know, you've already lost 4 companies that could present on a screening day. The other big thing I think is that the networking has changed so much. I'm seeing people being much more aggressive on LinkedIn. I'm getting a lot more cold contacts, which, you know, maybe works for some people. With me, I'm a little overwhelmed by all of it. I'm getting too much of it. But, you know, I understand. I mean, for an entrepreneur, there were so many events that we could go to, especially in New York City, where you could meet other entrepreneurs, other founders, angel investors, VCs, and we don't have that anymore. So events like this are really important for people to attend and to try and learn as much as possible and to gain whatever contacts they can in a tough environment for networking.
So but let's go to that question then. How should they make connections at this point? I mean, obviously people are going to go with whatever they can, and, you know, LinkedIn and, you know, emails over the transom. You know, they may have relationships they'll leverage, but you're right, the networking, which is a primary example, is gone. I mean, what do you recommend to people?
I think they have to really leverage their current contacts, go through people that you can get to, and look at how they might be able to help you. You know, friends of friends. And I mean, you got to be aggressive. This is a hard time, and the people who are most aggressive are the ones that are going to be seen.
Brad or Sapna, do you want to speak to that point about how people make the connection right now?
I'll jump in quick and then over to Shapna. In the case of the HBS Angels, in addition to what's been discussed, we list our roster of sector leaders for the various investment sectors with their contact information. So that is a logical point of entry for any founder who doesn't have another contact. And many of the other top angel groups do something similar, whether it's a board roster, mentor roster, or sector roster. So leverage that. Just do a little homework with the angel group in question.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think to add on to that, certain angel groups and angels have open office hours. I have them on Tuesdays. Golden Seeds has them. I don't know what days those are. So those are definitely ways to leverage and kind of build network. I would also say if you're going to write a cold email, I certainly read all my cold emails. Write a good one, right? Do your research. Understand, like, don't send me something about biotech. I invest in the future of retail. I have a website. You can read all about me. You can look at my portfolio. But before you write that email, research the person you're writing. Say why you think it's a fit. Really have a thoughtful reason, and have an ask. Is your ask that you're raising money? Is it that you want a meeting and mentorship and advice? But really be deliberate and intentional about your cold emails. Well-written cold emails can get responses. Poorly written cold emails, like the worst would be ones that are written to me as Mr. Shah, like picture me on my website. Don't do that. Poorly written ones get an immediate delete. Well-written ones, you can really get a better sense of who that founder is and want to take a meeting. The other thing I'd say is, and this is maybe a little plug, right before COVID, I wrote a blog post on how to find angel investors with lots of strategies of how to look them up and how to find different places that might have lists of investors or contact information for investors. It's on my website. Take a look. It includes things, to Brad's point about the fact that most angel groups have their membership lists on their website. Take a look, see what those people have invested in, do the research.
Sapna, you anticipated my next question. Actually, I did see that post, which is great, and I would recommend everyone to go take a look at that post. But you know, that is a really important question. How do you, we talked about connecting, but how do you identify the angel investors in the first place? Because Sapna, you mentioned early on and made a really important distinction, you know, that angel investors are different from VCs, and you know, VCs, it's funds, and they're pretty, they have different focuses and different stages, but they all have essentially the same structure. Whereas angels, sometimes you have angel groups, sometimes you have individuals, you have loose syndicates. Some are very focused, like the groups. Some do it as a hobby, and they'll do it in their spare time. And just finding them in the first place and knowing the ones that these are the ones I should focus on is challenging. I mean, you know, would Sapna spoke to that. Brad, Larry, would either of you like to speak quickly about just this subject of identifying the angel investors in the first place before you even start to connect with them?
Sure. The best resource I can suggest is the Angel Capital Association. Their website is a good resource for founders. It also includes a roster of what many would consider the top angel investing groups around the country. And in the current environment with everything virtual, one doesn't need to be restricted to one's local area. So go there and then do the homework that Sapna mentioned, and I think you'll be off to the races. As well, there's a consortium of angel groups in New York City, and when this is over, I'll share a list with Paul so that you also have that resource.
Great. We will send that out to all the registrants. Larry?
I agree with what Sapna and Brad have said. Research is an area that I particularly don't was an area of strength for me, so I don't really know how the best way to research this is. But I think Sapna and Brad have both.
All right.
I want to add one thing, if I might, Paul, to what Sapna and Larry said. Angels investing is a nice community. There's a lot of cross membership between groups, and the larger groups also share deals with one another. It is rare for one angel group to fill up a round. It's common for the better deals to be alerted to other angel groups, of course, with the permission of the founders. So don't think that it's siloed. We're quite the opposite, but you do need to make a connection and a relationship with one group to start that flywheel spinning.
All right.
That's a good point, Brad, is that you really don't need to think about one angel group as your sole source of funds. If you've got an angel group that's interested, it's often easier to find that other one. And some of the angel groups, I mean, you know, Harvard and New York Angels have been working together, Golden Seeds. There's a lot of, as Brad and Sapna said, a lot of work across the environment where people are working with each other to support deals.
All right. Thank you for that. I'd love to stay on this topic, but so much to talk about, so little time. Let's move on to talk about particular sectors. So this was something that came up again in the VC discussion, the fact that how differently impacted businesses are. There are some startups that are focusing on sectors like travel, which have just been wiped out. There are others which are focusing on sectors like remote technologies, which are having a great moment. And you know, on each side there are questions. You know, in the first is how do how do you survive to live another day? You just sort of plug along. One person asked, should I actually just shut down for a few months until the environment is better? But then on the other hand, those sectors which are having their moment, what about them? Because there is a desire in some sense to lean in and make the most of your moment, but you don't know how long that moment is going to last. So there's a concern about getting overextended sometimes as well. So maybe Sapna, would you like to lead off?
Sure. It's funny because the way I think about this is that whether you're in a sector like travel that's been hard hit or in remote work, which is obviously doing really well right now, I think the real question here from an investment perspective is the long term. And, as angels, we tend to hold investments for 7 to 9, maybe even more years, right? And so we're looking at the long-term outcome. And so the shorter term, if the current environment is helping your business quite a bit, but you expect it to go back to some sort of previous normal, that's one thing. If you expect a complete behavior change, maybe more people are working from home now and using Zoom and whatever. That's sort of a different question. So is the current environment a temporary state for you, whether good or bad? And what does the longer term environment look like? So I would say that, for companies that maybe are on the harder hit side, what can you do today to keep your business going? So because you believe that the long term in travel, you believe people will come back and they will want to travel, they will want to go to the beach and whatever that is. You just don't know when. So, right, what can you do now with your business? You might not be able to raise money now because your metrics aren't great. But if you really believe in the long-term business, don't give up. Continue to focus on what you can do today in this environment that'll help you build that foundation to continue growing once we come out of this, right? And for businesses that are doing really well right now, I mean, there are certain things that I believe we, and I think most angels will have beliefs, most investors will have beliefs on this front. Like I believe, and even though I don't invest in health, I believe telemedicine will become much more popular after this, right? I think we were moving in that direction. This is just accelerated an existing trend. So if you're in a telemedicine company, that's amazing. You're like riding a wave. It's not just great now, it will continue to be great. And so I would imagine investors are leaning in on that space right now. So I think you really have to think on whether you're doing well now or not doing well, what is the long-term effect of what for your industry and for your sector?
Thank you for that. Larry?
Yeah, I think one thing for companies, whether they're being hit or helped by this, is that if you have a deck that was done before February 1st, and you're working on projections before February 1st, redo them. Because whatever it is, whether you've got a company that's really being badly affected by this, and I've got a sports betting company and a couple travel companies which have been really hit hard, and I've got a telemedicine company that's doing great right now, and I think the advice obviously is different for both of them. For these companies that have really been hit by the pandemic's effects, I think you really have to look at holding cash and saving cash as long as possible. This is really a time when you've got to hunker down and stay alive and do whatever you can to do that. And, I've seen, of course, I know it's not easy, but a lot of founders are saying, okay, I'll forgo my salary. Obviously, we talk about salaries, the PPP program. I know a bunch of companies have gone after that and other federal opportunities. But most important is to recognize that the business has been affected and to explain to investors today how you are going to, how have you pivoted? How have you handled this situation? And I really think that some companies are going to come out of this, no matter how bad their business is currently, they're going to come out winners because they've come up with a program or a plan where they know how to get through this. And again, getting through this is a difficult thing right now because we don't know how long this is going to last. But, you got to expect this is going to be have a strong impact for several months, and that there will be a new normal, and try and project that and talk about that when talking to investors today. How has your business been affected, and how can you put a positive spin on it, and what are you doing to grow the business when things get back to normal?
So you wouldn't dissuade a founder in a particularly impacted industry from moving forward. It's more a matter of what the story is that they tell and how they position themselves. Is that fair to say?
And also what they're doing during this time. Sales and marketing efforts in a lot of these companies are really put on hold. But the product itself, the software, the hardware, whatever it is still something you can work on. So right now is a chance where the whole world is on pause, basically, for you guys, or whatever that particular company, to really perfect their business model, perfect their product. Founders that I've talked to, a lot of them are pulling back on their salaries, but they're continuing to pay the key software developers that are going to work really hard right now, so that when things do get back to the new normal, they will be in a position to have a better product than they had before this happened.
Thank you. Brad?
Yeah, good points by Larry and Sapna. I would just add to emphasize, right now, nimble wins. You need to move quickly to conserve your cash, but also if it's time for a pivot to a new application coming out of this, because the one you were looking at before February 1 is not coming back to the way you wanted it, start pivoting now. And if there's an opportunity in this crisis, jump on that quickly. But be nimble. That will win points with whoever you're pitching to. And of course, it will also make the difference for your business.
Thanks. Couple of questions. I'll just sort of direct these. Larry, one question. What impresses you or gets your attention to respond or engage with someone who reaches out? How much detail do you look for when a founder reaches out to you?
I don't want too much detail, but I want to know enough that I can make a determination if this is of interest. So, tell me what you're doing in detail. Don't, some of these one sentence descriptions just don't get it. I mean, I know we've all sat there as angels in meetings where 10 minutes into the meeting, I'm still not sure what you're asking me, what you're telling me you're doing. And really, you got to be very clear, and Sapna mentioned that before. So be really clear about what your mission is and how you're going about it. Everyone knows what's going on today. Talk about how you've changed your business model, or how you've pivoted, or what you're doing to survive right now. I think people are going to be impressed with really good plans and recognition of the situation, and that's going to bring that particular email to the top of the pile for me.
Thanks. For Brad, does Harvard Business School alumni angels, do you consider startups with founders that didn't graduate from Harvard Business School? Andy, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing. Great, thank you. Sapna, one question that came in. I'd be interested to know what range of investment amount the panel would typically expect to constitute an angel round, and how many angels might co-invest. Yeah, I can hear you now, Brad. Thank you. Sapna?
Yeah, I guess I would call, it's hard because the nomenclature is difficult, right? So it's hard to know what an angel round is versus a pre-seed versus a seed versus friends and family. I think what I would say is the kinds of I tend to tell people that I invest at pre-seed, so I tend to invest in rounds that are maybe about $1 million or less. It tends to be the first non-friends and family money in. Those rounds can have very large cap tables, so they could have, depending on how many angels are putting in $10,000 checks, $25,000 checks, $50,000 checks. It can be many. Sometimes those rounds can have a seed VC in them in the $250,000 check or the $400,000 check. So there's fewer angels needed to fill the round. I think this is it's very variable. It's also very dependent on different industries. It's dependent on kind of how much money you're trying to raise and whom. West Coast and East Coast are probably different here as well. So I would say there's not one, unfortunately, great answer. But what I would say is, there isn't a standard that you need to worry about deviating from. There isn't really a standard.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I would say in my clients, we see angel rounds and surprisingly large these days, low seven figures, which we weren't seeing a few years ago. So you're right. There's a lot more variation across that across the round size. All right. So again, we're gonna have to move on to our last topic, even though I don't feel like we really finished the previous topic. General advice. So on this, it's really sort of moving beyond from the fundraising question to the bigger question. All of you have run companies, large and small. What would your advice be to founders at this point in terms of how to get through? How do they reduce cash burn? That was a question that a number of people asked in the registration process. That's obviously very company specific. Every company is going to be different, but how do they reduce cash burn? What's the mindset? What advice can you give to people who are struggling to survive at this point? Brad?
Sure. The first comment is your runway is shorter than you think. So be very conservative about your projections of what you've got and what you're going to need. That said, building on Larry's point, think about what your core is and what core you're going to need coming out of this. And that's the last place you want to cut. Work around that so that when this is over and when you're coming out, you've got the essence of what you need to run the business. Perhaps it'll be a different business when the new normal returns.
Larry?
Yeah, I guess I have one little bit of advice that I give to a lot of founders, because I find I was taught by a German immigrant about business, my father. And one of the things he taught me early on was it's never bad to ask. Okay, don't be afraid to ask. And so many founders are, younger, less experienced, and you got to get to the point where you're not afraid to ask for something. So your rent is high, call up the landlord and get the rent reduced. You'd be surprised what you can ask for. And if you want a 25% reduction in the rent, ask for 50. You can't insult people, okay? Don't be afraid of insulting people. Get the costs down, preserve cash. This is survival of your business, and do what you have to do, legally, obviously. But the situation really is where everything is upside down right now, and people know that. And this is the time to ask for things and get your costs down. Obviously, any way you can get grants or anything else like that, go for it. But it's really preservation and surviving right now. And I think that's critical.
Thank you. Sapna?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with all of that more. I think the only thing I would add is what I'm seeing with companies that I've been talking to is if they're early enough in the process and maybe haven't raised money yet and we're maybe pre-launch or pre-product. They're continuing to work on those things, but they might also be picking up some freelance jobs on the side. Like, this is a time you have to do what you have to do to survive. And if what that means is you as a founder need to go out and get some work as well, that's also okay. I was talking to another company who's like, oh, we're cutting the fat. But I think this is a time where, many people are saying assume at least 18 months of runway, that you need to survive for 18 months of uncertainty. And if that's the case, it's not just cutting the fat, you're cutting into the muscle too. So you have to really think about what are all those things for that time frame that I can cut to kind of be there when this is all over. But the other side of it is, even if you're kind of early stage, to focus on customers, no matter what your business is, whether you're a software company, whether you're enterprise customers, whether you're consumers as your customers, even if they're not buying anything from you yet, or you're not ready to sell, or your industry sector is one that is hit really hard, there's still something that you can give your customers that can maybe help create that loyalty and build the platform for where you'll be after all of this ends, and build relationships, build customer loyalty, build an audience, for the longer haul. So that when we come out of this and when we come onto the other side, you still have been building something through this time.
Thank you. We're getting short on time. There's one question I'd like to throw out there that came up. If you could each speak to this, but like 30 seconds or less. Are there particular sectors that you're especially interested in over the coming months and couple of years? How about Brad?
Our group as a whole is obviously more interested in healthcare related businesses at the moment. So we're seeing an increase in those in our pitch events. However, there are businesses that are going to do well coming out of this. And as Sapna mentioned, it's about the long term, not the short term. So we continue to be interested in businesses that have a solid business proposition.
Great. Larry?
Yeah, I mean, at New York Angels, we invest in such a wide variety of companies. There is no category we don't invest in, really. So it's really a matter of making sure people understand that the business will make it through this hard time, and how you're planning to get to the next step in the new normal.
Great, thank you. Sapna?
I invest in the future of retail. I will continue to. I continue to see a lot of opportunity in the future of retail. I will say, within that sector, I think one of the more interesting pieces that's been coming out, and this was a trend even pre-COVID, but certainly now I believe will continue to grow, is D2C wellness. So I would say that might be something that I'm slightly more focused on more than before, but in the end, I still continue to maintain the same focus. I still feel like there's a lot of opportunity throughout kind of the broad world of retail.
Great, thank you. All right, we have a few minutes for final thoughts. 30 seconds or so. Larry, anything to last words?
Not really. I wish you all good luck. It's a tough world, but people have survived through tough times before, and you can get through this. Just keep thinking, keep doing, and watch the cash.
All right, Sapna?
Yeah, I would echo what Larry said, and I would say, don't give up. You can continue to noodle ways to make your business even better, but certainly don't feel like it's the end of the world and you have to give up, because you don't.
Thank you. Brad?
And just to add to that, these are the times that really define the best terms and the best leaders. We know you're there. That's how you got to where you are. That's why we invested in many of you. And that's why we'll continue to.
All right. Thank you. With that, Brad, Sapna, Larry, thank you so much. Really appreciate all of your insights. I will, to the participants, I would say, keep your eyes open. We'll be sending around the video for this event, which you should feel free to circulate to those who were not able to tune in. Remember the events that Andy mentioned in the beginning, including our next event on startup financing, which will be June 5th. I would also note that there is a wealth of videos on startup issues for startup companies that we've done for Tech Alliance over the recent months and years, which are available on the Tech Alliance YouTube channel, as well as on the resources page of my firm website, including the video for the event we did on VC financing in the time of COVID-19 last month, which you might have a particular interest in. So that's it. Thank you all. Andy, anything further?
No, thank you all for participating in today's panel. Again, wish you a very well and happy weekend.